to the Condé Nast Traveller Dine and Drink Festival, where we're chatting with the best in the business about all things food. I'm Diya, Features Director at Condé Nast Traveller India. The last few years have changed the where, what, and how of dining and drinking for all of us. While people at home have reverted to comfort cooking and a whole lot of banana bread, the F&B industry has gone through massive upheaval. And with that upheaval has come change. Our panel today is a bunch of pastry chefs and Mithai makers who have been pushing the boundaries of all the desserts that we eat. They straddle the space between tradition and modernity and have been creating new templates for how India eats their sweets. We have with us Vinesh Johny, co-founder and executive pastry chef of Lavonne Academy of Baking Science and Pastry Arts India. Bani Nanda, pastry chef and founder of Miam Patisserie in Delhi. And Mathur, founder and director at Khoya Mithai. Thank you so much for being a part of Condé Nast Traveller's Dine and Drink Festival. I think the first thing I'd like to begin with is exactly how the pandemic has affected you as a business. So maybe we'll start with Sid.
Sure. There was a point, I guess there's a part of the pandemic that nobody can really work with, where you are shut down, where there's panic, you are totally bound in terms of what you can do. Your kitchens are shut, your staff is sitting at home. So during that time was the toughest for us. We tried very hard to sort of do our calls, but there was always this cloud in terms of what's going to happen, when is it going to open. So that was one part which I think affects almost everybody the same way. There's just very little that you can do. And then came sort of the opening in little bits and, like starting a little bit and now home delivery only. I think that, to be honest, it picked up quite well for most of us, in the sense that I feel that if you have a brand or if you have a product that people appreciate and love, that loyalty really comes through. And I think that was for us very heartwarming, because once things started to open up, we actually saw things going back pretty quickly. It's just a part where you can't control which gets to you.
Right. And Bani, what changed for you? I remember seeing a video where you talked about the fact that it was you and your husband running the whole business single-handedly almost for a little bit after things opened up. So tell us what that was like.
So for the most part, I think we were getting it wrong right before the pandemic hit. We thought that a healthy business module would be to continue opening patisseries and cafes around Delhi. And we weren't focusing on deliveries and maxing out our delivery radius from our existing base kitchen. So it was actually a blessing in disguise, because when we were sitting locked in at home, we restructured our entire business. This is back in March, April last year. So we restructured everything and we came back, and we didn't realize that. So we're based in South Delhi, and we didn't realize that somebody really far up north, for example, is dying to eat a Miam cake, but we're not catering to them. And we were continuing to make mistakes, like we wanted to keep opening outlets in and around South Delhi. And what actually happened was that we boosted our whole delivery network, and business picked up. We weren't expecting it the way we reopened, and last year, the whole of last year, it was this huge boom. And we decided that we don't even need a retail space. So last year in April, we were about to open 3 new outlets, and we just decided to shut everything and stay away from top dollar rent and focus on delivering. And then we expanded our base kitchen essentially, and now we built this huge network. So things really picked up for us after COVID, surprisingly.
And Vinesh, what about you?
Just want to say hi to everybody before I get into how the pandemic affected us. Big fan of what Sid does. Bani and I have been friends for a while. Except that, during the pandemic, all the chefs were going live with each other. And this is the live that I'm going with Bani and Sid.
Yeah.
And Diya, of course, thank you so much for having me here. So when the pandemic really hit us, the first 3 weeks, I actually enjoyed it because I needed the break. We just sat at home, watched TV, didn't do any baking because it was 8 years of Lavonne, which was non-stop, right? And then finally, the 3 weeks started becoming much longer. It's when we started getting a little bit worried, and that's when I actually got onto the call with the other directors asking, what is our plan of action? How do we handle the situation? And for Lavonne, it's basically two parts. We have the academy and we also have the pastry shop. We were quick enough to, sort of adapt to how education could be taken online. So we quickly put a plan together that, at the end of the day, for us, it was trying to figure out what was the best way to solve for everybody who works at Lavonne. And try and see in how we could bring in revenues. So the online classes did really well. Also, it gave me time to, connect with other chefs, meet new people, do a lot of baking at home, rediscover baking, how it would be done in the house. So all of that happened. Social media was, taking off really well. So apart from that, classes happening online, the pastry shop had to be reimagined to where somebody would enjoy desserts differently at home, especially during a pandemic. So going back to the simpler desserts, thinking about things that are delicious, scrumptious, which could be, delivered at home in the best possible way. So all of that. But, it was nice to have the team that we had because everybody was pitching in ideas. And it sort of brought it was not just the management thinking, but it was also the entire team of chefs thinking and coming up with concepts that, could make sure that we were successful during the pandemic.
Right. So it's interesting that you're talking about going back to simpler desserts because, nostalgia and comfort food have been a big part of how people have been eating during the pandemic. How has that channeling of nostalgia worked for all of you in your respective fields?
I think at some level, everybody likes eating simpler things in life all the time, especially when you look at a simple dessert or the recipe that has been so traditional. What is it that we could do to take it to the next level is just trying to understand the flavors better, trying to understand the techniques better, trying to use better quality ingredients to then come up with the same thing, but in a much more better version of it, right? And when you're sitting at home during a pandemic and you're like, really, you just want to eat something delicious. You don't want to eat anything pretentious. You want to try and get the most, something that you could just sit on your couch and dig into, right? So that was the type of desserts that we were working on. So we made a good tiramisu or a good chocolate mousse cake, in a tub that could travel well. Making good quality bakes or viennoiseries that can also be, you could like heat it up at home. So things like that, a lot of travel cakes that did well for us. So I think right now with the way, and that trend is still continued. I think people are still doing a lot of simple desserts. And even for me, right now I'm looking at doing desserts at that level.
Right. So Bani, what is the one dessert that you sort of kept returning to when you were baking at home, when you were recalibrating what you made?
Banana bread. I just didn't. I think the internet made me discover banana bread all over again, and because I'm a trained pastry chef, I kept sort of trying to make it better, and I used maple, and one time I used nutmeg. So I just kept revamping banana bread at home.
And Sid, what about you? What is that one sweet that you kept going back to?
Actually, when we created Khoya Mithai, one of the main pillars for us was nostalgia, because we were very convinced that you just do not get Mithai, the way that it used to be. And I'm not talking about like, our parents or grandparents. I'm talking even when I was a kid, and I used to come. I used to live in London, but I used to come and visit, and I used to always go to the Mithai guy and get like one chocolate burfi and one coconut burfi, and I used to love it. And I just feel that, over time it became synthetic, it became, gluggy, it just became very sweet. And so that was a pillar. And so we actually do a lot of things that do invoke a lot of nostalgia. So for example, the milk cake, we worked extremely hard, to get that right, extremely hard. And my halwais were really, at one point, not very, they weren't very happy with, I was like, do it again. But, we must have done that about 11 to 13, 12, 14 times before we just got it exactly right. I'll never forget that I was at, when we opened a store in Chanakya, I was trying to spend more time at Chanakya, talk to guests, speak with people. And there was, a couple came and he said, I'll have a milk cake. And he just had one and he ate it. And he said, oh, alwar ki yaad aa gayi and all that. And I felt so warm and fuzzy inside. And I thought, this is it. This is really what it is. Right. And if you to ask me most recently what it is, by a mile, it's a Mithai called Bal Mithai. So we just launched that. For me, that's huge nostalgia. Somebody always bring it back from the hills on a holiday and that one box. And we just kind of made a very good version of that, I feel. And that's something that I feel that out of all the comments that we typically get or people who call or message, that was that one just blew up for us. A lot of people contacted us and told us that they really enjoyed it.
So during the pandemic, did you have people requesting a specific sweet, the one that sort of, everyone wanted over and over again?
I think there were some things that were just always in pole position. And for us, no matter what we do, there'll always be, these 3 or 4 that people would love. And that is the milk cake, that's the pista and coconut laddu. Those 3 are, it's in high demand. We dare not even think about, even pausing any of those for a second. So I think life is very tough without those 3, and people really came back to it. And exactly, what Vinesh also mentioned, it's the simpler things. And luckily for us, we are actually just in the business of creating simplicity and taste, and so for us, it worked quite well.
Right. So to go back to one of the things you mentioned, that when someone ate that sweet, they said, alwar ki yaad aa gayi. So this idea of authenticity of a sweet, or the authenticity of that perfect French dessert, or anything that you'll do, how important is that? And how do you straddle authenticity with innovation?
I think authenticity with baking is, especially now, I don't know how much of it is actually authentic, or we can call it traditional French dessert or classic American. But at the end of the day, I feel like you're still using ingredients that are available to you. And as a pastry chef, you're still limited to the ingredients that are available to you, because unlike culinary chefs where you can actually use local produce, sometimes pastry chefs have to heavily depend on imported ingredients. And now, because of how much education has been available for everybody, even for free on YouTube, the standards of pastry is pretty much same across the world. So somebody making desserts in Malaysia, somebody making desserts in Australia, somebody making desserts in Japan, somebody making desserts in Georgia, it all almost, the techniques are similar. So what is finally authentic? No one knows. Maybe the techniques are also sort of authentic, but it gets repetitive in different countries. So then finally it depends on what is a traditional dessert that probably existed from a certain country, and only that. And then using those flavors to come up with something new. So for me, I feel like if I do a lot of French desserts, but I don't, even if I try and replicate it in a modern way where I have to do, I did a Kaju Katli for So Good magazine because they wanted to see an Indian inspired dessert. For me, it's more from the flavor perspective rather than, trying to make a mithai, because I think mithai making is a whole new skill altogether. And I don't know if a pastry chef who've traditionally trained in making desserts can suddenly switch to making mithais and make a modernized version of that. I think it's really hard. So using Indian flavors to make up traditional French desserts or modern desserts, I think is the easier way to go about.
Right.
I think more than Indian flavors, I went, like last year I went back to what have people really grown up eating, and if it's a pineapple cake, and sometimes we get in that rut as pastry chefs that, I don't want to make a pineapple cake, I'm better than that, I don't want to do this. or a black forest cake. So I thought let's just give people what they want, and I reinvented a few of these nostalgic cakes. So for me as a pastry chef, it's also more about revisiting these nostalgic memories as opposed to forcefully adding Indian ingredients into the French pastry. So when I did the black forest, I did it my way. It was nothing like a traditional black forest, and it was nothing like the kind of black forest we grew up eating. But people really took it well, and they really embraced it. So I think that has been my version of giving people something that is nostalgic.
Right. And Sid, what about you with authenticity, and especially when people are looking for a particular flavor in a mithai?
It's weird because, for us, innovation was the authenticity, in the sense that we actually went back to the future. We just went because I felt that, that things were not the same any longer when people were making mithai. Maybe they were making, mithai at mass levels. They were used, and as you do when you grow businesses, then you start cutting a little bit of cost, and this sugar is 1 rupee cheaper, and this substitute is better, and now we can add a little bit of syrup and get better yields. And I felt that, that's what was missing. So we actually our innovation was actually to be authentic. And this is actually a really interesting story. I'm not sure if anybody on the panel knows this, maybe Bani, if she remembers, but when I had the idea of Khoya, I actually met Bani at a dinner, and I told her, listen, should we you want to come over and maybe we can we work together on this thing? And I never forget her answer. And she said, look, I'm not sure if I'm the person for you, I'm not sure if I can really help because it's a little bit different. And after that, the first thing that I did was I got a halwai, and I got a superstar pastry chef, from a hotel. And I put them together and I said, now go in the kitchen and make me the best laddu you've ever made in your life, whatever. And obviously, and they were working and fighting and everything. And then all these laddus came out and I ate them and they were all terrible. And I was like, what's going on over here? Because they could not be in sync, So here we had somebody who's trying to innovate, and here's somebody who was being very authentic, and it was kind of clashing. Exactly, I think what Bani and Vinesh were kind of talking about. However, so what I did is I told them, please make one mithai in front of me from start to finish. And I have an understanding of, so they made the whole thing. And I said, okay, great. I said, pastry chef, thank you, but that's it for you. And I said, okay, now halwai, now we're going to work together. And then I started telling him, now break this down, roast this first. Don't do that. Use this better ghee. Don't put so much sugar, and then over time, it just came out. And then after the next week, when we had that mithai, we immediately knew. I immediately knew that when I had that bite, that this is, something that is very, very unique.
Right. So it's an interesting thing, the other part that you talk about, that perfect flavor, but that perfect flavor has to be replicated every single time, because unlike other chefs or other professions, consistency is key for what you'll do. So what are the challenges in maintaining that consistency? Because I know there are things like weather, maybe a supplier changing. So tell me a little bit about the challenges that you faced and how you've overcome them.
So with pastry, I think it's easier because we all have standard recipe cards. So for example, the Miam chocolate mousse will taste the same if an intern makes it, or if I make it, or if it was made last year. If you had to compare the taste. So I think like Vinesh was saying, we do rely on certain imported ingredients, which is I'm trying to make a shift. I want to use more locally grown ingredients, but there are some staples that, like cream, butter, chocolate, that if we switch those, it would really change the DNA of our recipes. But for the most part, I think pastry chefs have it easy because the recipes get standardized, and sometimes you literally just have to follow the recipe to the T. So overall, consistency is I'm not really worried about it, so long as, for example, I was working with Treacle last year, and there's this brand. It's an English brand called Tate and Lyle, those vintage tins, right? And I got hold of a batch of really nice Tate and Lyle treacle, and then my suppliers like, oh, ab nahi aayega, you know how suppliers, they just ditch you, and you have the entire cake on the menu. And I switched to Indian treacle, and I found it extremely acidic. So then, when I face these situations, I just remove things off my menu. When I reach this point where I can't control it any further, and there's a major quality or a major ingredient problem from the back end, I just remove it from the menu.
Right. And Vinesh, what about you?
I think, of course, we have standardized recipes, so it's much more easier to attain a certain product in pastry compared to how cuisine chefs would handle it. But at the same time, I also feel like because Lavonne has such a strong training background, one of the things that we heavily focus on is constantly training our staff. Because one of the things that I think, as much as we also have standardized recipes, if you're making a caramel, even a couple of degrees up and down could actually change the flavor of a praline that you're making. So constantly getting that type of temperature or the color, because when you're doing it in bulk, as much as you're heavily also dependent on equipment, sometimes you need to make sure that people are constantly trained, they are overlooked upon, the chefs are watching the young chefs taking charge and making it. So I think one of the things that we do, apart from having very standard recipes, is training.
So there's a lot of science in what all of you all do, but there's also the part where a lot of your customers think that you're literally wizards and magicians and you can create just about anything. So what is that point where you actually say no, that we're not going to do this, we're not going to create this confection for your child's birthday or recreate this mithai in the colors of the unicorn? When do you say no?
So I actually built Miam on saying, because I started from home. So I keep, now that I think of it, I built Miam by saying no. Can I get a Mickey Mouse on my cake? No. Can I get like bright pink, golden and purple macaroons? No. Can you like deliver my cake somewhere across, I don't know where. At that point, I didn't have delivery. No, I can't. So I just kept saying no politely, but what it did was it helped me shape my branding, and I did not instantly realize it then. But the entire branding that I didn't consciously work towards, I think it just came together because I said no so much.
What about you, Sid?
Look, I think that in any circumstance, if saying yes is going to impact your brand negatively, either in terms of positioning or your product, you just have to say no. It's not easy to say no, but when you understand what the consequences are of trying to wing it, it's just not worth the risk. And we've said no. I mean, I'll tell you one example. There's a guy, he said, look, I want to order, and he was from Nagpur. He said, I want 600 boxes of, mango cheesecake barfi. I'm like, well, we don't do mango cheesecake barfi because it doesn't really exist in real life, as a traditional mithai. So I can't do that. But I said, look, I have some really other wonderful desserts mithai. So can I send it to you? He's like, no. So I said, okay, bear with me. I have an idea. So then we went to the drawing board and then I spoke with our advisors. We did some research, and figured out that there's actually a lovely mango barfi, traditional mango barfi. So I called him. We tried it a number of times, and finally when we got something right, I called him. I said, look, I've created something. It's a mango barfi. It's quite nice. It's the right season. Can I send you a box? And if you think it's, maybe it's not cheesecake, but it's the mango. And he had it, and he really appreciated it. And okay, so we didn't get 600 boxes, but we did get 200. And I thought that was fair. So I think, yeah, for sure, we also unfortunately do end up saying no a lot, because people do feel that they're expecting white chocolate or macadamia or dulce de leche, and that's something that we just don't do. It's nothing. I don't have anything against it. It's just that's not up. That's not the brand.
Right. And Vinesh, what about you? When was the last time you said no to a client?
I'm not really sure when was the last time we've said no, but when we started Lavonne, I think we said yes to almost everything because we were all in. I was 23 years old, and borrowed money from parents, and when we started the business, we had to say yes to almost everything because that's the only way that we could, take it to the next level. But now with so much time that's passed and how much education we've received and knowing what's right and what's wrong, if I feel like something that's not ethical in terms of it being an ingredient in our product, then we definitely say no. So if there's anybody who says, can you make a cheaper plum cake? I really don't even know how to do it. So we say no. So, those are the kind of things that we say no to. Lately, we've been off colors completely. We just launched our macarons all white. My business partners were like, we're not going to sell any. I said, it's okay. I mean, let's put it out there, see what people have to say. So, these are the things that we're trying to work on. So let's see what the future holds for us.
But Vinesh, the thing I really want to ask you is this wizardry that you have created with chocolate. The flute that you created and the one that was actually played. Tell us a little bit about that project that went viral and created a whole sensation on the internet.
Oh my God. Actually, I'm still in shock of, about that whole thing that I did. I mean, we've been doing a lot of chocolate work because of the classes we do, chocolate sculptures in class. We've had a bunch of interactive type of showpieces that I've done before. But the flute was really an accident that happened because I was in Malaysia for 3 months in the lockdown and I couldn't come back because they'd cancelled all flights. And during that time, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos and, how to make type of videos. And one of the things that I wanted to see was how wind instruments worked. And when I watched the video about making a flute, it looked fairly simple because it is really just a piece of bamboo with holes cut out and one side that's blocked so that it can make some sound. So the idea was to see if any sound is possible with chocolate. So we made a hollow tube. I cut out a few holes, covered one end, called my friend who is an incredible flute player. And actually the first flute that we tried was already in tune. We had made only 3 holes, but he could get notes that were in sync. And then we worked to finally making a perfect flute where we did about 20 tubes, kept tuning it. Because once you make the hole too big, then you can't make the hole too small.
Right.
So it was a fun experiment. And then, of course, we had to play A.R. Rahman. And I'm glad that it took off the way it did.
Right. But that was a fascinating sort of thing. Bani, can you tell me what is the one dessert that you've made that you feel has really pushed the envelope?
So I would like to. I keep experimenting, and every 3 months I get very bored of my own menu. But I've come to realize that the market in Delhi is they want familiar things. They want pretty looking things, familiar things, but they don't really let me push to the kind of to my abilities. In my opinion, this is what I feel. But what we did this year with the Black Forest, it sounds very generic. It's just the Black Forest, but it was my whole whatever I'd envisioned from my version of a Black Forest. I just put it in, and it did so well because it was a familiar flavor. But otherwise, recently I've just been playing around with a lot of cheeses, and I did a trial for a blue cheese macaron. But the issue is that some people embrace it, and then some people just hear blue cheese and they just skip my story. I'm pretty sure.
And Sid, what about you? I mean, you have things like a pink coconut laddu and other sweets that look exquisite, and while they taste traditional. So tell me, what have you made that has completely changed the definition of a particular kind of mithai?
When we created Khoya Mithai, I mean, we took no shortcuts. I spent about 7 months visiting places, going to cities, spending a lot of time in Chandni Chowk, making people eat our mithai, like people who are just living in Chandni Chowk for like 40, 50 years, making them eat our mithai, making the halwais eat our mithai, and for us, it was a careful balance of traditional tasting and flavors and ingredients, but at the same time to make it look good. So we also worked quite hard on presentation, not only of the mithai itself, but even in terms of the packaging. We wanted to have almost Indian mithai with a French elegance, because, it was For us, we had a different challenge. I mean, what Vinesh and Bani do, their desserts just look insane, amazing, crazy, right? It doesn't matter. They put it in a plastic bag. People will be like, oh my God, that's like amazing. But for Mithai, it was just almost embarrassing to give a box of Mithai because the quality was not good. And, it was like a fish market in the Hawaii, wherever. And it doesn't matter where you went, whether it's the local guy or even if it's an evergreen, guy sticking his thumb in, putting it. So I think for us, a lot of the visuals came from the outer packaging, in terms of presentation. So, and today we have a large number of people who actually come to the store and pick up a box of Mithai to take out to give to somebody for dinner, instead of a bottle of wine. And I think that's quite lovely, and people are quite pleased to receive it. And we've worked on the box a lot. It took us an enormous amount of time to get it right to what we felt was going to have an impact without being, overtly, crazy fancy or something. And that was the balance for us.
Right. So I think considering all of you are in the business where you work with sugar and wheat and everything that's essentially considered the villain in today's world, how do you deal with that? Everybody who's vegan, everyone who's looking at sugar-free foods, how do you in vindication of sugar and wheat, how do you speak?
So when I was a student, I was studying in Paris, and I just asked. I mean, we would have we would have a demonstration first of the lesson, and then we would have to go into the practical room and make it. But when I just had, because there's such a large market in India that's vegetarian and they don't even eat eggs, right? So I just asked them like, oh, and also there is a sugar-free trend in India. It's been there for a while because so many people are diabetic. And I just asked them about eggless ice creams, and my chef was aghast. I will never forget his face. He was aghast. He's like, an eggless ice cream does not exist. I'm like, no, you come to Delhi and you come to India, and like all of Mother Dairy is eggless. So don't tell me that eggless ice creams don't exist. And I think that at that time we were also trained. This is a good 10 years ago. We were trained to be purists, and they would just look down upon these trends and gluten-free or vegan. But it's really catching on, especially in Europe more than in Delhi. And now I see more French chefs, or even I've seen more coursework in culinary schools that is leaning towards catering to vegans or people who are diabetic or just healthier desserts. So from a business standpoint, because we're catering to so many people, we just decided that people want a sugar-free cake, we should have one on the menu. If people want vegan cakes, we should have a vegan menu. If they have celiac or they want to avoid gluten, we should just do a gluten-free menu. And what it does is it makes it very inclusive. And also, I feel that there are a lot of people who feel a little attacked in terms of, if they see chefs who just aren't including all of these dietary requirements, they feel a little attacked, or they feel that, oh, but it's possible, like a gluten-free cake is possible, a sugar-free cake is possible, so why can't you just make it for us?
What about you, Vinesh? What would you say in defense of sugar and wheat?
I think what I have to say now might be a little bit different in perspective. I feel like recipes that have been followed for many, many years hasn't changed, right? It's the same thing that's been around, tried, tested. We know what the effects of sugars are on our body. Right now, switching up ingredients, we don't know what the long-term effects can be. I don't know if enough time has passed for us to actually know eating so much of stevia what it would do. We don't know that. And even gluten-free recipes at the end of the day may not be as healthy as you think it is, because of course it's gluten-free if you are celiac, but if you just want to eat it because you want to avoid carbs, then there's other ingredients that actually has more calories in making a gluten-free cake. Right. What has really changed in our life, it's the way we live our lifestyle, right? It's not like how back in the day we used to walk and then we didn't have the convenience that we have. which is why now the recipes that we do feel like we're not burning enough of those calories. So I think one of the main things that the conversation should be on how much we should be eating in terms of just consuming calories more than switching up recipes a lot. That being said, we do, being Lavonne, our focus is research and development. Our focus is learning what's happening and the access that we have to the international chefs. So our entire team is also working on our vegan program. We have a sugar-free program. We have the entire gluten-free desserts that we're going to be working on. A lot of it has already been made and it tastes absolutely delicious. Dark chocolate is vegan. So, you can't go wrong with making an incredible vegan cake.
Right. And Sid, what would you say about sugar-free or vegan mithai?
I love sugar. I mean, I eat I eat dessert every day. I get a lot of grief about it, and I'm much better now. But I have like a 8-year-old kind of tasting chocolate Skittles and Snickers and cakes, and I mean, I love everything. However, even I, when I would have a motichur laddu, from a local store, I would feel that was crazy sweet. It was almost like dripping, and when you had a bite of it, it's almost like that your tongue was coated with an after kind of it's like chashni, it's like sugar syrup, and I was just like, okay, how is this even happening? So when we started working on our recipes, we also found that the amount of sugar that is being used today in mithai is a lot more than it traditionally was. So we actually just started reducing it. The first shot, we reduced it by 1/3 to see. And there's some mithais that work, like a milk cake, maybe not, it needs like caramelization, but like the motichur, besan laddu, it actually worked. You could actually taste besan, you could actually taste the nuts, you could taste the roast flavor,
right.
So it actually improved the mithai for us. So to a great extent, when we look at people who buy mithai, you might have one bite of mithai, or if somebody says, oh, here, I bought a new house, and they give you a box of mithai, your instant reaction is like, I'm going to break it in half and just, and be like, oh, thank you. Because you already know that it's going to be so sweet. But in our case, we also have a lot of our clients who eat like 3 or 4 in one go. And it's almost like a box of chocolates, because we're very careful with the amount of sugar that we put in.
Right. So now we're going to do this quick rapid fire thing where you can't think too much, but you have to answer really quickly. And they're very short, simple questions.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Let's do it. Is there a prize at the end?
Very bad at rapid fire.
No, there isn't a prize.
That's why you're going first.
Okay, so the last dessert you ate.
Yesterday, what did I eat? Stolen.
The last dessert I ate was actually an amazing dessert, you guys. It was a dulce de leche and caramel miso ice cream stick at Arts Club yesterday.
Oh.
This is next.
And by the way, you guys, caramel and miso, it's like, where was this all our lives? Caramel and miso. And you're welcome in advance.
Wow. Bani, the last dessert.
I made a maple cake yesterday for our Christmas child, so I have that.
The one trend in desserts that must die now. Vinesh.
Pull me up cakes.
Oh God, I was going to say pull me up cakes. My God. It's very difficult for me to answer that. I just, I'm such a sucker for desserts. One thing that would...
And rainbow cake.
You've got 2, Sid, you haven't got 1.
Can I just get one of Vinesh's there? Like rainbow cake.
Okay, Bani.
Those piñata cakes that you have to smash. I don't even know they're cakes, but I hate those.
Okay, your pantry essentials. 3 pantry essentials. Vinesh.
Coffee, chocolate, and butter.
Ghee, besan, and pista.
So for me, it's butter, sea salt, and some good spices, probably cinnamon.
Right. One dessert experiment that went terribly wrong.
I don't think I have the heart to say it, but I tried putting chocolate with chicken liver patty once.
Goodness.
It was...
For me, I don't think it went wrong. It just didn't have the reaction. So we actually made a pista and saffron malpua, but I think that it just didn't, it didn't have the difference in terms of, like a very signature kind of a taste that it didn't really pick up. So that was the one thing.
I was in Sri Lanka and I carried back this exotic fruit. It's called egg fruit. I don't know if anyone knows about it, but if you peel it, it looks like the texture is the same as cooked yolks. Okay, and now that I've said it to you that it's an egg fruit, so that egg factor is very hard to erase from the memory. So we did this compote with this egg fruit, and I was just forcing it on. Like I was like, I need egg fruit in my menu, and I need it in this dessert. And I think it's the worst thing that we ever made at Miam, and people actually liked it. I don't know how they liked it, or they were lying to me, but we pushed it out. It went in our Sri Lankan box, but it was terrible.
Okay, that's great. You all have all done extremely well. And now we're going to go to the last part of this, which is where we're going to do a version of passing the parcel around. So in this case, we're passing ingredients around, and ingredients that each of you work with. So, Vinesh, you get Khoya. What would you make? What dessert in your style would you make with Khoya? Sid, what would you do with tempered chocolate? And Bani, what would you do with motichur laddu?
Eat it.
No, you've got to interpret it in your own way.
Okay. Yeah.
Vinesh, let's begin with you.
Okay, I've already done a dessert with Khoya. Have you seen the gulab jamun series that I did?
Yeah, I saw that.
Roasted banana and hazelnut, and then there was one with soak in the coffee syrup. I think I might my take on figuring out how to do jamuns, because jamuns are my favorite Indian sweets.
Sid, what would you do with tempered chocolate in a mithai?
That's a good question. I think that what I would try to do, and of course I don't have that technical knowledge like these guys about tempered chocolate, but what I would do is that maybe do a sort of a little bit liquidy milk cake and wrap it in the tempered chocolate, and perhaps serve it with a lovely espresso.
Oh, that sounds lovely. And Bani, what would you do with the motichur laddu?
I would probably think of dehydrating it a little bit, or try to make it a crispier version where you just get like a motichur laddu soil, probably, and just either try to reconstruct it back as a sablé, or just throw some on a plated dessert, which we don't really do, but I think it would feel nice on a plated dessert.
Nice. That is quite lovely. But thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure chatting with all of you all. Thank you so much for being a part of Condé Nast Traveller's Dine and Drink Festival. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank you, guys.